Please tell me you could hear that.
Amazing.
That was for you. That was all for you.
Fired
How
up.
you doing, girl? How you doing?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Oh, sorry, I'm out of breath. As you can tell, I was dancing to it.
Techno dancing.
Oh, dude, that's it, man. Yeah, I like that. The whole mix is much better, but Satisfaction. Speaking of, we were kind of talking before, clubs in Vegas. No, I'm just kidding. So what's going on? What are you up to?
Yeah. I guess since the last time I was here, so I did a bunch.
Oh, sidebar.
Yeah.
The most viewed episode of Windshield Time.
Was that one?
With you, 100%.
Oh, cool! What an honor.
Well, let's be honest. You were probably sitting there at home just playing.
Yeah, I had to get all my friends and neighbors on there to stream it. Get your clicks up.
Yeah, right. Help it out.
Yeah.
What's going on since the last time? Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, no. So, did a bunch of consulting last year. Had a lot of fun. Kind of ended up in a unexpected niche bucket of consulting for a handful of private equity companies, which was a really unique perspective on the industry because I've been on the contractor side for a while. So kind of getting to get close to those guys and seeing how they look at the industry and thinking about taking advantage of opportunities was pretty exciting. And actually one of my customers is now my boss. So I decided to take a full-time role with Omnia Exterior Solutions. So we partnered with 11 companies right now. And so we're a roofing roll-up, and my responsibility is overseeing national sales operations. So we got an enablement team, like I'm, our boy Andy over here. And so we really support the partners in our portfolio from all things sales operations, recruiting, training, enablement, that type of support. So we're building something pretty cool over here. So we're staying busy, helping these guys, become more sophisticated sellers, which is a really fun and interesting challenge. So yeah.
That is. I remember seeing the gentleman. I don't remember his name, so I don't even want to pretend, but he spoke at Top 500, I believe, this past year, right?
Oh, yeah. Jim Zeminski. Yep. Chairman of the board. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jim's been in the industry a long time, and this has become sort of a passion. And so, it's really excited to support him and what we're building over here. But yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge and really just down to earth, cool guy. And, we work with a lot of cool people, and I think he's done a great job of being really picky about the culture and the partners that we partner with need to have, the right type of culture for what we're trying to build here.
That's awesome. How's been is this your first kind of experience on the working within a PE owned firm, or?
Yeah.
Do you like it? You don't have to say. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
What do you see? I guess not like dislike, but what do you see as the biggest difference from where you've come from versus this?
Yeah, no,
I think that's fair.
Bro. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really I think Omni has done a great job of bringing in leadership that is from outside the industry that's built, billion-dollar businesses, right? Like they've seen this, they've done this. Many of them have been through large acquisitions and turns, right? So they've been through the other side of what we want to accomplish anyway. And I think what Omni is trying to focus on now is bringing in, subject matter experts to support the operating teams. We've also done a great job of promoting people up out of organizations to the support level team to, some of the founders now sit at that level and support across the businesses. And I think that, I feel like my role is someone to kind of help translate what the team is saying and doing to align to, private equity expectations. And so it's a really interesting and unique challenge because, in my past, I've built, large sales teams who've been successful, but we weren't necessarily building to sell, right? So it's been an interesting learning curve to understand, what it takes to differentiate ourselves, to build something to sell it, but to be responsible in the integration of these organizations so that they don't end up having a bad experience because it, just as well as I do, there's many firms out there that, will tell you that they wish they wouldn't have sold their company to that partner, right? And I think that, I hope that's something that we're doing different. It seems to be, that we want to be mindful and choose the right people to partner based on, our goals. And I think we've done a good job of that so far. So Yeah, I'm only 4 months in officially, but yeah, it's really interesting and a unique opportunity that I haven't been in, a seat like this before in my career. So super exciting just for my personal growth as well.
Yeah. You mentioned guys and gals coming from the outside the space in this environment, and are you seeing the benefit of that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Right, just really unique perspectives, and I think sometimes, and I know you and I've talked about this just over our careers and knowing each other, there's a lot of limiting beliefs in the industry, right? Or a lot of seduction from success, right? Like these guys have been extremely successful, made more money than I've ever made in my career. I'll tell you that, right? But getting to 30 million is very different than getting to 50. Is very different than getting to 100. Very different than getting to 200, right? And so I think that the team that we've built has a really high level of expertise in helping the acceleration, the implementation, and the integration to get you from those inflection points to the next one. And I think that a lot of people in our industry are really talented on the trade side and may not always be the best sales and marketing companies. And so I think that, private equity kind of helps them become really good sales, marketing, recruiting, HR, finance engines, and so we're really trying to focus on the integration of these organizations into these world-class types of systems.
That's awesome. How is it? Is it pretty crazy with the, when you do adopt on, I know you've only been there 4 months, but like say you bring on, you acquire another company, it's like a whole new, it's like it's like adopting a child, into your family, right? Like, so you already have however many offices that are, do all the businesses operate independently? Like they remain? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So, but then there is some central tie to all of them, like that, whether it's you all report the same way, or is that kind of the main connection?
Yeah, we really build a network, right? So like all these guys have a lot of experience, and we've kind of built this legacy group of founders, owners, operators, people that have had success. So I think really the value is they get access to all this knowledge, and they don't have to figure it out when they're alone. They don't have to recreate the wheel out in South Dakota when we got to figure it out over here, right? So we kind of really do a good job, or try to do a good job, of sharing best practices. But yeah, they all operate on their own. We support them, right? So if they want to launch a window business tomorrow and don't know how to start, we'll help them do that, right? But we're not going to tell them, you got to do that or things like that, right? So it's more like, hey, we're buying really solid businesses. They know what they're doing, or we wouldn't bought them, right? Yeah. And it's more just like, how can we help them put gasoline on the fire and become a little more sophisticated? And we're putting them onto a consistent CRM and an ERP, so we can have the right visibility and better insights, and make data-driven decisions. But yeah, at the end of the day, they operate their own businesses.
That's cool. That's definitely. I've seen a few others do it. Well known. Michael Hoy's been on here. I see it with Great Day and those. And to me, it's like I couldn't even fathom. But then again, like anything, it's just taking one step at a time. But
yeah, if it was easy, Joe, everyone would be doing it. That's for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Damn it. Wish that wasn't true. Yeah, that's got to be different. But then again, like I said, interesting. So plus you have your own network group.
Yeah.
Like, at any given point.
Yeah. Yeah. And these guys do a great job. Like, they're always willing to help the other person up. And I think like that's kind of, what makes the culture special is there's, it's not what's in it for me is like, oh, hey, I see that guy's doing it really well. I think I could learn from that. And a lot of it's like launching a new part of their business. Like, we have partners that have never done commercial work before, but we have guys who built, $30 million businesses off commercial business and do it extremely well, sophisticated with high margins. So it's like, how do you learn from that guy and put that into your business and really accelerate that, right? And so, I think that's the power of the network is that shared knowledge for sure.
So day to day, are you working with sales reps, sales leader? Like what's,
a little bit of everything. Yeah. Yeah. So my enablement team really supports like the day to day, so we spend a lot of time building trainings and structures and things of that nature. And, I think that's kind of what got us on this topic is just like, there's a lot of noise in the industry right now. There's a lot of noise on the news. There's a lot of noise politically. And, I think it's easy to get caught as a sales leader on the noise and the leads. And, it's really just about getting back to the foundations, right? It's like, working with them to help them understand that, focus on the controllables, right? those things always work when times are tough, and how do you maximize what you have? So yeah, my team spends a lot of time with reps face to face, and then with the managers, helping them understand and implement sales process, these coaching tools, or the CRM and all the changes that we've been going through recently. So we're spending time with trainers, and we have a handful of VP level, director of sales level folks in the portfolio as well.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So where do you find your best, personally, what do you like working with more? Who, I should say?
Yeah. Well, I think just in general, my passion has always been sales managers. I feel like I have a soft spot in general for sales managers, maybe because I was one. And I feel like, you get hired usually because you're a solid sales rep and you kind of just end up in that seat. It's a pretty common story in this industry. And then it's because you were a good sales rep, you should just know how to be a great manager, And then a lot of us flounder or flop to figure out how to become that great manager, because it's a lot harder to be a manager maybe than just to focus on ourselves, right? Or we just didn't get the skills or the training for it, So I feel like a passion of mine is helping sales managers not have to really go through what took me so long to build a system for myself, right? And I learned things from a lot of people, but I still had to kind of put it all together. And now, we actually just had a leadership summit with all the sales leaders in our portfolio. And really it was just how do we give you the foundation to make you successful? But it's all about the fundamentals, right? So we spent time talking about ride-alongs and running coaching sessions and things of that nature. And I've seen this for years in my career, is the one thing that sales managers sacrifice every week is the ride-along, right? It's that's the thing that is easy to put off because the customer called or complained or something happened with a finance job, or your boss is asking you to pull another report or whatever's going on. It's it's always the ride along that gets sacrificed. And so my team spends a lot of time just talking about the fundamental pieces of success, which is just getting out there with your team and knowing what's actually happening so you can make informed decisions on where you're going to focus and make an impact to inflect their performance, right? And I think that that's something that's really lacking in the industry as a whole. I think a lot of people focus a lot on the reps, which is necessary, but I feel like the managers kind of get forgotten and pushed to the side in that. So
yeah, it's probably the number one reason, especially if you outsource or occasionally bring in somebody from the outside to train.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good ones. It doesn't, and then they wonder why. It's good for the trainers because it's kind of recurring revenue, but they wonder 100%. Why things don't stick. And it's well, if the sales managers don't coach it,
yes.
And about, it's just, it's not gonna hold. So it usually may get a lift in performance, but it doesn't sustain.
Yeah. And I think I don't think it's ever really that, from what I've, in my experience in interacting with sales managers, in general, is I think there's a lot of fear in the fact of they're not comfortable with it. So they don't do it, right? And no one's really pushing them to understand what do they need to become comfortable with that process, or getting in front of your team and coaching it to them, or God forbid, holding them accountable to it, right? And it's usually I from what I've found, it's not a lack of will, right? They want to do it, but it's typically a lack of skill. So we try to over-index on giving them the skills and the resources to feel confident and comfortable that they can deliver it to be impactful. And if they can't, we try to show them, we model that for them until, they get comfortable. But I think at the end of the day, if you're a sales manager, I love the Rilla and the Cyros and all those things, right? I'm a huge fan of technology, but I think you have to do it all, right? You can't just listen to that and never be able to see the customer's face and expression. And if they picked up their phone and got bored during your pitch and things like that, right? There's just things you're never going to see. And so I guess I'm a little old school in the sense of I still want you to get out in the car. I still want you to get on the road. I want you to go take that guy to lunch and have a meaningful one-on-one where they realize you care about them and you're not asking them to do anything different than you're willing to do, right? Go on the Friday night ride along, go on the Sunday ride along, do the things, and it's crazy how much information is revealed in an hour and a half ride along, and the power of that versus trying to get that information out of your rep in a one-on-one or whatever it is. So yeah, we're just really, really heavily focused on the fundamentals right now and just control what you can control, right? The inputs are going to get us the outputs if we do the inputs well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was fortunate to work in two distinct different environments. Won't name names or companies, but one of them, just drastically outperformed the other. And it was the expectation around from sales leaders around rides were at first, like when I was in the, kind of in the frame, I was like, oh, these guys are nuts. And then you realize, well, maybe that's why we achieve what we achieve as a team.
Yeah. And like, let's be real, Joe, like that's a grind, right? Like being a sales manager is a grind. Like, I don't care. Like being a rep was hard. Don't get me wrong. I mean, man, I was mad as shit when you guys threw me all around the map and I drove 300 miles a day and didn't sell anything, right? Like that's a hard thing to do, no doubt. And I don't want to negate that at all. But, I think like at the end of the day, you're getting pounded on your quota, right? It never gets smaller. It always gets bigger. You're dealing with the customers. You're dealing with your reps. You got to go on these ride-alongs. You got to pull the reports. You got to get the paperwork in. I mean, like that stuff is really monotonous, but like, how can you like find the joy in that meeting with your reps and like have that fun? And if that doesn't excite you, it's definitely not the job for you.
Well, and I think there's the other challenge, right? When you hire a rep or promote a rep, right? It's not that they couldn't do it. I mean, it's usually that expectation isn't set, and you're putting somebody in a position of true service who is used to just being selfish, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
And so then they're like, what do you mean I have to win through others? Hold on. And then they try to become the hero, right? Mm-hmm. And they're constantly closing on ride-alongs for the rep. And I'm like, hey, short-term win, long-term, you're just going to continue to, drive just misery into your life because they're going to lean on you all the time for that. So it's it's an interesting topic. It's become more and more, because a lot of people will say, oh, there's a difference, and they understand the importance of sales management, but you still don't see a bunch of people really teaching sales managers. And I use the word manager often because I think it gets a bad, we all want to be the John Maxwells of leadership, but there is just the basic fundamentals, the X's and O's of how do for me, I believe primary role of a sales manager, just, no fluffy LinkedIn crap, just some straight talk. It's to ensure your reps do their job.
100%.
That's it. You know what I mean? And then you do that by growing and developing, right? So, but they don't, whether it's the rides, the coaching, the, one-on-one primarily too is going to be your best and most effective, I found.
Yep.
But then it's how do I conduct a one-on-one? So anyway, it's no one. I mean, I'm sure I say no one, and then there's no one with a real, everybody's got 10-step selling. Where's the 10-step, at least of basic sales leadership? And then because I think that can be taught, I think leadership more or less comes with, with the experience. Like you grow into a leader. I could probably coach somebody quickly into basic day-to-day sales management.
Yes. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it brings up a good point, right? I think there's things you manage in a role like that, right? And then there's things you coach, right? And I would index much more heavily on the coaching. And if we're coaching the right things, we don't have to manage so much, right? And it's like, I mean, how many times did you guys have to call and, get reps ride-alongs, paperwork in or chase a check and things like that, right? It's like, if you tolerate that, you deal with that, right? And so I think like, that's a big thing for sales managers is just like, you deal with the things you accept, period, and I got guys that I've worked with over the years are like, I can't get this guy to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, how many times are you going to let him do that? And if you never draw the line, then there is no line, right? And then it's like getting bogged down in that type of stuff versus lifting up and saying, hey, if I took a different approach and held this guy accountable and I didn't waste 2 hours a week on that, I could go for a ride along, or I could do a different coaching session, or I could hire another person, and it's just like, I think sometimes we get lost in the minutia because there's so much that can hit your plate as a sales manager every day. I mean, you could be busy, 48 hours a day. I'm no joke, right? So it's like
100%.
And we talk about this a lot too, is like, you might be busy, but are you busy on the wrong stuff, right? And like, if you're not spending time with your team, you're busy on the wrong stuff, right? If you're constantly just sitting behind your computer, fixing numbers, fixing paperwork, you're focusing on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, but also I feel like, a lot of leadership doesn't understand how much of that is happening and how to help sales managers like understand where that time is getting sucked to prioritize and maybe shelf some of that, or create a better process system, tool, technology to solve some of these things to give them better visibility so it doesn't take so long to manage something like that too, right? I mean, it's a spider web.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another guy. He's not in the group because he's not on Facebook, but he's smart, right? But I did have him on Windshield time, Bob, my good friend Bob Camary, and he made probably a year ago now for his company out there in the Midwest. Awesome bath business he built. They finally made the jump to, we have sales managers and then we have administrative managers on the sales side. Almost like, I think I don't want to put words, it's almost like sales operations, right?
Yep.
That deals with the paperwork issues, the whatever, and then that way the sales manager is focusing on the things that really move the needle day to day with the reps. And when I had him on, he talked about it, and I think at that point he hadn't been doing it as long, but he had already seen just enormous. There really was no reason for the sales manager to be in the office, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think he even eliminated the offices for some of them, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yours is now your car.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, we got to that place in my past life too, is like anything that kept the managers in the office, we either offloaded somewhere else or we centralized that responsibility to the director of sales, like lead choosing, right? Like your sales manager shouldn't have to sit in the office and do that. If that's where we still are, right? It's not being auto assigned, like somebody above that, right? Let them do that. Or if we have multiple managers, somebody was a manager on duty, right? And then it rotated and you only did that one day a week instead of 5, right? And so I think it's like, how can you also get creative with the staff that you have and not have to add another headcount? But if you are lucky enough to have the budget to do that, I'm a huge fan of having like sales operations, right? The technology, relationships, all that good stuff, maybe even training lives there, right? If it doesn't live in HR, right, depending on your orgs. And so, once sales management gets you, you're like a full-time sales rep, right? You've graduated from training and now you're a producer, and let me help you manage and produce. And I found a lot of value in roles like that, and kind of separating that at a certain size is important.
It reminds me, there's a line you always hear say, guys, I mean, I've said it, right? You can always find a reason to not demo a lead, right? If you look hard enough, you can always find a reason not to get on a ride along if you look hard enough. And it's hard to, the leader above that is like, but eventually it's like, hey man, every time I'm asking you about this, there's something. Yeah. So let's hard program these dates and times in, and then let those be, the reason you didn't get to that is because of the ride along, not vice versa.
Yeah.
But, and I hated him.
Yeah.
I shouldn't, let me rephrase that. I love watching a great rep perform. Love it. Like, even when you know exactly what they're going to say, I'm like, man, right? It's the ones that you're like, whoa. But then I had somebody tell me one time, they're like, yeah, does it make you sick to your stomach? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, it's your fault. And I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
Right? Damn it. So then you're like, oh my goodness. I tell a very serious story that guys laugh at me all the time, because to the point too, because I think there's a little bit of fear around a sales manager being, what do I do? Like, if I don't know what to coach them on and whatever. And that's important. You got to learn that at some point, because you do want to be able to have a one-on-one after and debrief and maybe be able to obviously be competent enough to point out, hey, this. But I think the biggest half of it is the camaraderie, the leadership of being in the trench with them. And I always joke, this is Jack's, the truest story, Scouts Honor, at our first company. We had just moved over to tablets. Go on a ride along. I'm also at the time freshly single, and I was online dating, and I met my wife in a ride along, swiping one way or the other. Dead serious. Because the ride along, it was miserable. I was like, well, let's see. So once tablets came around and you just got to make sure you turn your volume down, I could get through a ride along. But I wonder why, even if we eliminate all the, I had my reasons for not liking them, but I wonder what is, I guess everybody could be different. What's the root cause? Because it's everywhere you go. It's like, yeah, I couldn't get a ride along, or I don't ride. I'm like, whoa. That's fundamental, man.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's called.
I think a lot of people struggle to understand the value of it, is what I've kind of uncovered, is like, I think that, look, sometimes you have reps who totally change their pitch because they think they're going to show you what you want to see, right? I don't want you to do that. I want to see what you normally do so I can actually help you, right? Because that's what's going to be able to let me help you. And I think that I think a lot of sales managers, just generally speaking, have struggled to dissect the the performance challenge because they're not in the field to actually see what's happening, right? And I think a lot of people take the rep's phone call and they talk through leads with them and they hear the rep's version of the lead. But I promise you, when you listen to the recordings or you're in the house, and look, I'm guilty of it too, right? I have a conversation with you, I hear one thing, you hear another, and we walk away and we think we had a great conversation, but it might have been completely different, right?
No.
Happens in our relationships all the time too. So it's like, there's things that I've picked up on ride-alongs that people had no idea. And until I started getting wins, like I didn't necessarily know the power of the ride-alongs, but I went on enough to then see how it impacted my team, influenced the weekly trainings we had, made me realize like when I had that feeling in my stomach, like I'm totally embarrassed right now and I should just take this appointment over. Then I had to kind of turn the mirror on myself. I was like, why do I even let this guy get an appointment? They're literally practicing in front of my customers. They're embarrassing my brand. And I'm embarrassed sitting here as their manager that I'm letting this happen in the house, right?
Yeah.
So like that feeling you felt, like I've definitely been on several of those for sure. And then it's like, okay, well, how can I take the theme of this and then have the best sales trainer in the world who knows how to motivate them, maybe even better than I do on the sales process, go fix that thing for me, right? And then it was like, we built this machine of these insights from the ride-alongs, then fueled these trainings, and then we just kept lifting and lifting and lifting. And so it's like, I think that the hesitation is twofold, that they think another task is more important and is going to make a bigger impact. And potentially there's a lot of lack of understanding of how to actually dissect the problem to be effective when they go spend that time. I mean, when I was consulting, I can't tell you how many managers, when I would go ride with their team and come back with my ride along report, they're like, oh, I had no idea that they were doing that. And like, this makes so much sense now. And then we'd really get into a good conversation after I provided my insights. And then it was really easy to see is like, oh, they don't even know when this happens in that pitch, what that behavior is really doing and how to correct that behavior. So then I spent a ton of time on just like, okay, if this is the process, here's where it breaks down. How do you even see that as a leader and know how to correct it, right? That's a skill, And again, if this was all easy, everyone would close everything and every sales manager would be killing their numbers. But it's like that ability, I think, to spend the time to inspect what you expect. And that's important. But you also have to know, like, what is the prescription for that?
Yeah, it's a good point. And maybe sometimes it
stay away from it because they don't know the answers of that. And if they're not getting the support to help them do that, why would they want to go spend their time there? Because it is super time consuming. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. You go on a ride along, you're out half day minimum.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, yeah.
So like, I know why it happens. I don't love
that's true.
What happens, right? But how do we help them understand the value of it? Like the value of it is everything we said, right? It's like, I can correct you and I can fix a good rep in one meeting.
Yeah.
Right. Someone who's struggling, I might be able to give you something to fix you tonight on one thing. Like, oh, hey, do this in your company story. You stop doing that, add it back in. It's going to make an impact. But like on a rep who's your underperformer, I'd rather take them off the road, fix them in the classroom, and then put them back on the road. Right? You're top.
So that's a good. They got to earn. They got to earn a ride along. I think.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, but like meaning, I'm not going to go watch you in the home, and I can already tell from you. You have never been maybe competent from the number standpoint that there's clearly something. Or I did go witness you in the home, and it is a matter of, hey, like this isn't like me just coaching one or two things. This is, let me get you back with Tim for a half day or and then kind of again they earn because your time has to be like we're talking about. It's reps almost earn that middle wouldn't percentage. They've earned that ride along and need it versus the ones that just they're not even on. They shouldn't have really probably graduated maybe in some cases like from or
100%.
That's
yeah. I mean, we had to maximize it. Like, look, we had a big team, right? And when you're riding along 3-4 times a week, like you want it to be the needle mover, right? So if you ride with the bottom all the time, you're going to burn your sales manager out. You're never really going to get the lift because the bottom shouldn't be on leads anyway, right? I mean, you got a 20%, 25% closer. I don't need to ride with you to know you're messing up the sales process. I could see it in your number, right? So like you come back in the classroom and we fix it there so you don't practice on my customer that I spent $500,000, $800,000 on, right? But if you're, I don't know, you're closing in the 30s and you need to get to 40 or 50, whatever that is, And maybe that's something that like you perform really well in the classroom. And now we need to go see how it's actually happening in the field, because like, okay, you're doing really well here. Maybe you can't overcome a certain objection in the field, or maybe you're saying something you don't realize that's changing the potency of this part of the process, right? Now that's something I want to go see in the field, right? Because that could be many things, right? But at least I know if you can convert around, I don't know, 35 on average, that means you probably have the fundamentals down, right? But if you don't have the fundamentals down, I already know how to fix it. You just need a lot of constant repetition to build your confidence in that thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's also like sales manager knowing where you are in that competency cycle, right? And I think Vin taught us really well that unconsciously uncompetent, how do you move them through those boxes? And then to me, like the consciously competent, that's who I want to ride with. So then I can make them unconsciously competent. But if you're not in that box, you just go in the classroom for me over and over and over again.
It's a good, that's a good point. You hit on something that I just was talking with a group about too. Yes, at putting a rep on a lead at, I don't know, let's just $700 lead. That's real money, but the real number or the real cost is whatever your current NSLI is.
100%.
Like that's because that came up in conversation was like, yeah, it's not cheap. The leads are this. And I go, that's not even the real cost. The real cost, if I'm looking around opportunity cost, would be your NSLI.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of managers balance that too, right? That battle of like, oh, I don't want to take my ref off of leads because that's how they make money to go in this training session. But like where I come from is like, okay, but if they're a 20% closer anyway, they shouldn't really be on the lead. Give that lead to your 40% closer and let that guy eat all day, right? Overload him with opportunity. Let's get these ones fixed. And yeah, I think a lot of sales managers battle that because, the reps are on commission and they feel like the right thing to do is to get them opportunity and maybe negating the impact of like their ability to actually even take advantage of that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And when leads get thin, man, you gotta, if you want to hit your goal, right, and you're the sales manager, and I try to kind of voice this is like, look, satisfying every rep on your team when they complain doesn't always behoove you, right? And I see so many times where I'll pull rack and stacks, and this has been for years now, 12, 13 years in the industry now. It's like, I'll pull that thing as the leader of managers, and nothing gets me more mad than seeing the worst performer get more leads than a top performer. And it's just like, there's so many things we can control, right? Going back to the fundamentals to me, right? Your top performers deserve more appointments than the bottom, period, right? The bottom deserves heavy support and engagement with your training organization, whether that's your managers, your trainers, whoever does that for you, right? And if you can't get those people where they got to go, then you got to graduate them out of your business. And it's just like, maximize those leads and think about, I think that maybe you or Shoemaker was the first one to kind of take me through like, hey, if this guy had gotten less leads and they went here, this is what the outcome of your team would have looked like this month. And that was a smack in the face, and I never made that mistake again, right? Yeah. But somebody had to show that to me because I was kind of thinking like a rep because I was promoted and I was a rep. And then I became the manager of reps and then I was friends with those guys, right? Yeah. And so it's like, you really got to start to think about the business different. It's like, how do I put my whole team in a position to win and not just like this one or two loud guys because they're always in my ear, I think we can fall victim to that too as sales leaders sometimes.
That's a hot topic in my world these days. And all it took was just I was actually glad the rep asked me about it, which was like a batting order, lead allocation, things like that.
Yeah.
And I had to, and once we had a great conversation about it, and he's like, all right, I get it. Makes sense. Right. But to him, outside looking in was, wouldn't you give a bottom rep a chance on this? And the thing that always comes up, and this conversation's been happening for a long time with different peers in the space is, do you give let's just say you were to look at leads from the data and you say, hey, this is my top performing lead source. This is my bottom performing lead source. 9 times out of 10, I can put that bottom guy on either lead, he or she, and they're going to perform. I can give the bottom performer the top performing lead source and they're going to punt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. So that doesn't fix it either. Just like we tell a homeowner, window problems don't fix themselves, Mrs. Jones. I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen a window become energy efficient or this, whatever, or start to miraculously just open for you and lock or whatever. Same thing with a rep. 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 0 for more. How long are you going to wait until? And then the psychological damage.
Oh yeah.
Now they don't believe in the people don't want call. People don't buy on the first sit. Our products are too expensive. I mean, I'll tell you, it's the hardest. It's hard. I think it's the hardest. Frontline sales leadership is the hardest position in the business.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, but and that's not to take away from other leaders throughout the business, but I think all the pressure truly ends up coming down on that leader, because I've never met a leader that's been able to complain his way about leads to the top. Right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's the lead's fault, and have then the owners go, yeah, you know what? So I mean, but yeah, that's yeah, it's crazy that you're hitting the nail on the head with that stuff. And do you believe in when you've run, like, or I know you're not involved in it like hands-on, or maybe you are now, but I know in the past you have been. Do you one of the things I hear a lot about, and I don't know if people get it, and I think it's a good topic, is capacity around issued appointments versus how many reps you have and how many reps you keep on the team.
Yeah. To
make sure those bottom, because they always seem to find their way into the underperformed leads, into the underperformers' hands.
Yeah.
Do you employ that into your model, like in terms of hiring and?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think my philosophy is that, look, when you're new, you shouldn't, like, if I just got trained and this is my first week selling, I shouldn't be getting a full slate of leads, period. Right? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I see a lot of people just like turn the fire hose on. They're like, oh, I trained them. And by the way, training just meant product training and how to write a contract, right? No real sales process training. Like, generally speaking, in the industry, that's what training means, right? Yeah. And so, then they just unleash them. The reps get a full slate. They're not selling them, but they're getting more leads. They don't know how to manage it, right? And it's a mess. So for me, like, my philosophy is you go through very structured training, which is sales process first and foremost. Then you learn the product, right? We teach you 1 or 2 of those things to make you really good at it. For the first 30 days, maybe you run 1 appointment a day, tops, right? 5 in a week, something like that. And you're enrolled in classroom training. Every day there is classroom training. And then you're still going on ride-alongs with the senior reps and seeing how it's done. You're going to installs. You're doing all these things, right? Maybe we get you out there door knocking so you learn how to generate your own business, right? And so I think like the 30 days is really foundational. I would minimize how much company issued opportunities we're giving them, because we know they're not probably going to close them like the other guys. And if they are, and they're confident and the paperwork's clean and they're the right culture fit and they're building, yeah, cool, give them a couple more. But like, to me, you don't run a full slate until 90 days where you've proven to me that you can execute that sales process. You're the right culture fit. And then after that, like, if you're underperforming, and now we're talking about, you should be running a full slate, but you're not hitting your numbers, and how does that impact capacity? Like, look, I was pretty critical of the sales managers I measured directly. Like, if you have a guy and he closed at 10% last week or went over, if he's not enrolled in 3 training sessions this week and you're not on a ride along with them, like, you're not doing your job, right? And so I think it's really critical that the capacity may be stunted at times. And there were definitely times where I had to go to leadership and be like, hey, I know you have more leads today. I'm going to give you like 1 of these guys out of training, but you're going to have to reset that lead, right? Because like, it's not going to be a good customer experience if I let this person go out there. And so we need to have that conversation too, because look, a negative review is worth way more than that $500 lead I just rescheduled. And I don't, I obviously, like, the leads are holy, right? I don't want to say that they're not, and it's okay to just do that, right? But like, in order to make sure our team is prepared, we should have been doing that in all the days where we didn't have enough opportunity, right? And I see a lot of that too, where it's like we kind of just give the reps days off when we don't have leads. It's like, well, how can we enrich them during those times? And then also, I had a lot of reps who didn't want to come to those trainings, right? At first, there was a lot of resistance to this type of, function, because we didn't have it in the business the way that it became, right? Like that muscle we built over years, right? And at first, it was like, I don't need that. I don't want that. I'm going to go do this. I don't have a lead. But then we had people, they were like, oh, you guys are teaching this? Like, I'm going to drop in. So they just like, they weren't required, but they heard about it and other people found value in it. So then they wanted to drop in. And we had people ask like, hey, can you take me off the calendar? I want to come to that, which meant we were doing it really well, right? That's the best compliment we can get as sales managers. We don't get a lot of thanks, but that was like a thank you, Yeah. And so I think like the capacity piece is like, look, we need to run enough capacity to hit our numbers, but not at the sake of efficiency, right? And that's what really matters. And so it's like, yeah, we're getting better at thinking about capacity in our business. And we're really trying to dial in the lead machines. Like a lot of these guys have just grown organically, right? So it's just amazing growth. And they're becoming more sophisticated marketers, right? And I think like in general, I think a standard schedule is important too. I see a lot of orders when I was consulting, and we came from a place that was very buttoned up, 10-2-6, 9-1-5, right? And I aligned to that because it's easier from an expectation. But even, I see a lot of organizations where the reps just take leads at whatever time it comes through. There's no consistency in their schedule, which that would have drove me crazy, right? Like, and then so it's just like, there's so many pieces back to the spider web that even touch like the scheduling and capacities. Is like, are you running standard lead appointment slots? Yes or no? Okay. How many leads do your reps normally run? Well, we got guys that maybe we're running 7 leads a day. It's like, whoa, okay, let's dial that back, right? So it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. But to me, it's like, if the reps aren't efficient, they don't deserve to be on the calendar in consuming a full schedule. And if they're not doing activity outside of that to make themselves better or enrich the skill set, then that's probably a red flag on culture. And should they be in the business at all, regardless of, the capacity they could add to you?
Yeah, that's I saw that as a big one. Most recently for me was making sure that we had, an additional, in this case, we've hovered around 20% above what marketing is going to supply us. So we don't get stuck running that bottom. They still get leads, obviously, because that number that changes, but it's having the ability. The other thing is it doesn't force your hand, depending if the data shows it, to not run 3 a day for 7 straight days. I mean, because at some point, very few can go that hard if they're doing it right. They can. Anybody can do it, but like you start to see performance, tank.
11, 12 a week is like, seems like the sweet spot to be efficient and not just, 3 leads a day and you're driving. That's a long day.
Yeah.
And if you're allowed to follow up with it, then you got to balance that book of business on top of whatever else you got new. Brutal.
So what are you seeing around that follow up? Since you brought it up, what are you a little bit of it? You see it. You have so many different companies kind of that you get to.
Yeah, we have a mixed bag. So most of our businesses to sit, we do have a handful of insurance-based businesses. So they're kind of working the claims process, and that obviously takes some time for the insurance approvals. So most of our guys are following up on the business, and there are a handful of them that once it close, when it's appropriate, and depending on the products or how complex it might be. But obviously our goal is like, the faster we can get price out, right? That's what we want to be pushing towards. And I think, I just come from a place where I totally believe in that. And there's a lot of, conflicting opinions of that in the industry. But my belief is, I think every customer deserves to see the price on the first visit. Whether you discount or provide incentives to push that on the first visit can be debated. And, there's a lot to be said about following up within a certain amount of time and still getting that business. But I think like, if I'm a rep, my personal preference is I just want to focus on selling the next one. Like I loved having the resources of an inside sales support team that followed up with my stuff. I wasn't organized to do it. I definitely wouldn't have done it as good as they did it. And so I think, I come from a place of, my ideal workflow is that everyone's presented a price on the first visit, asks for that business, and we find a way to, continue that relationship and not hammer or hurt that relationship with a hard close, right? And I think that's what's given it the bad nomenclature that it gets. Is like, I don't think anything's wrong with it once it closed, and if there is something wrong with it, it means you didn't do it right,
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it gets this concept that it's like this, no, that's not the point. It's
people are like, I don't want to hard close anyone. I'm like, but that's not what I'm asking you to do. Like I don't want to do that either. And in fact, we will never want you to do that. Right. So I think it's just, again, kind of goes back to education and showing them, what's possible. And we definitely had quite a bit of success in some of the organizations that we've, kind of piloting and saying, hey, look, you don't have to do it, but like, let's test it and see what happens. And every time we go in and train or go on a ride along, like they're selling. We just had one. Andy was out last week on a ride along. deal closed for 80K, right? So it's just like, I think, again, they got to see the power of it. And, some of them have never seen it done well before. And there are people in their markets that aren't doing it well that have kind of caused that, like, oh, I don't want to do that. And that's not, the customer experience we want to provide. So, yeah. But look, I mean, if you look at the numbers, all the best in the business once they close. So,
yeah. I mean,
pretty much in the pudding,
It really is. And I'm shocked because, again, it was the norm for me coming in, for you coming in, the way we were brought into the business. It wasn't even like a discussion. Yeah. And it was extreme back then, right? Like, I mean, you were rehashing us was like, well, you're like, oh, this is bullshit. They're going to cut their, this is, and I look at it now, though, we're not anywhere near that bad, but yet we still have more than I've ever seen where it's like, I say allowed, if you will, but okayed. And back to psychology, you're destroying belief in a rep the minute you let them go back at the same price, which is just, again, first off, unethical. But let's just ignore ethics for a minute. But you're just scoring. I mean, I'm serious, right? If you say it's for today only, but like after a while, the second time that they do get to go back and write the deal, and get the full commit, like you're just saying, okay, then that number's not that, the requirements around it aren't real. Yeah. So
100%. Well, that's a whole nother issue in the industry, right? Like, gosh, if we could just start to get more honest and transparent about what the price actually is and stop playing so many games with the customer, like we could change our industry just by doing that. Right. And like, I think that is really what gave the Once It Closed such a bad taste was just the companies that came in, dropped 60%, or send the rehash manager out there the same day to just rip it out. And it's like, those things are, I mean, I would never let someone come back to my house the same day to try to repitch me. Like, that is mind blowing to me. Yeah. And it works successfully, but like, I would never, I just, when I think about being the customer and like what I want the experience to be like, that's not it,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the bad first date, and then you call her 100 times that same night, seeing if you can talk your way back through it a second one. It's not going to happen. Doesn't go over a while. And there's so many easy ways to still incentivize it.
Yeah.
Have it be credible. And most of it's just saying, hey, look, it's the fact that we then call back and offer it again. And so it destroys the belief. And that's back to kind of our original topic. It's one of the things I've found as being the root cause of a lot of things is that belief. Yeah. Right. And if the sales manager doesn't believe in the model, then you're definitely not going to reinforce it.
Yeah.
And now you got 20 reps out there all doing their own thing. That's hard to, you're making some serious work for you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. What crazy I've always loved you're so savvy when it comes to tech. That's been a part of your entire career, even before you got into this industry. I remember you used to help me with my BlackBerry, for crying out loud. So you don't have to share anything specific, but anything exciting that you're seeing out there in the industry? I know we're getting ready. There is a big tech event coming up, I think, for the industry at some point soon. Maybe.
Is it Fast Dollar, I think, coming up?
Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah, I think I saw it. Thought I saw that. But anyway, anything wild that's like, holy crap, it's gonna be a game changer? Or are we gonna have robots in the house selling? What are we gonna do?
I don't know. I've seen some crazy things that the Boston Robotic Company builds. I don't know. Yeah. That Yamaha dog you can like ride now. I don't know. Anyway, we ride those to our appointments soon, Joe.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, no, I think for us right now, and I know our CEO, Jeff Kiselbash, has talked about this broadly, is we're in the process of implementing Salesforce as our CRM. So, we're kind of knee deep in the build and the rollout. And so, I've never been involved in a CRM rollout at this level. So it's really, really a unique experience to build it from scratch. And so we've been going through this process since I joined in January. We rolled it out to our organizations across March. We just finished up like a 5-6 week tour of trips of getting everybody onboarded. And I think for us is like Salesforce is a world-class tool, right? There's a lot of people choosing things like Service Titan and things that are for the trades, but it's really not designed to drive the type of growth and the infrastructure and the type of reporting and really an enterprise business like we want to build. So I think that's probably the biggest game changer for us this year. And of course, we have, partnerships with the Eagle Views, the Hovers of the world, and those folks are important to our workflow. We're working through really mainly Salesforce right now, and building the ERP out for our business to kind of have that front end sales and marketing live in Salesforce, and then the production side, flow through the ERP. So that's pretty much our core focus this year, is the integration of the CRM and the ERP into our partner organizations.
Yeah, I was a part of one with Salesforce last year. That was, and again, I think it also comes down to the implementer who project the coordinator.
Huge.
Because we had a slightly different experience in general, not Salesforce related, but like, it was tough when you're crying to bring i360 back, right? And you're like, oh, just take it, please. But yeah, it's that's interesting, and actually brings up another question I didn't even think about. I meant to ask you earlier. How do you think, or onboarding? Whether it's a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Let's just assume, I've always been around 2-week onboarding, but have you seen onboarding go longer with tech because of all the apps that are used, or what do you see there?
Yeah, good question. I think it depends, right? Like in our past life, we were trying to create this tech stack and we had a lot of disjointed tech, right? And so I do think that added time in our past life, because it was like, okay, you learn the process. And then we had like a bunch of different tools to get the contract through, right? And that was a little bit cumbersome. I think where we are now, from my lens, we're probably extending the onboarding that our organizations previously had, because we're more indexing towards the sales process part of it versus like the internal, like, let me teach you how to do the paperwork and the product training that was going on a lot. So we're probably extending what they previously had, but I still think that 2 to 3 weeks is reasonable. And I would say that's pretty dedicated classroom time. And I still think, for us, I still would say like in week 3 or 4, you're still in training, right? But you're starting to do things in the field. You're going on ride-alongs. You maybe take a lead here and there to kind of get your feet wet. But yeah, I mean, I think it can. It's also like, is the tech stack designed to really streamline? Or was the tech stack just kind of put together because it was like the shiny toy? Because I saw a lot of that in my consulting business. So much shiny toy.
100%.
That it was like killing the rep. And I'm like, why do we even use this tool? Like it does, and it's like, oh, well, we wanted it because of this. I'm like, but that's okay. So like, do we need this or not? And it was kind of like taking some of that out to simplify it, because, I've seen it in ways where the technology is great and it helps streamline the training, or on the flip side, it makes it a nightmare because the reps got to learn a million different things, and some of it may not even really be relevant to the role that they do every day, which is just meeting with their customers and getting the contracts through. Yeah. So, what we're trying to build is something that will accelerate that and drive adoption quickly. And that's the goal there. So, we're trying to make sure that any technology that we're looking at, if possible, integrates within that system to be as streamlined as it can be.
Yeah, but you just hit the nail on the head with the, I had a friend contact me recently, was launching his own business, he's doing great. I'm so excited for him. He's in the group, probably watching this today, but he was like, hey, do I need X, Y, and Z? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
Like Google Drive until you get to whatever, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but he's got a lot of great resources in the industry, and there's a lot of guys and gals pushing things because it's almost like they're little pods of groups that are like, oh, you gotta have this, and I'm like, bro,
yes. Yeah,
yeah.
We went to what? Like, is it a must-have or is it a nice-to-have? Right, it's kind of how I try to look at it, and then also like, what is it really solving for? Right, so I think like, the technology that's been most powerful from what I've seen is like the right information in the CRM and a really badass sales presentation and an easy way to process your finance application. And like, if you have that, those are the tools if you're talking about a sales rep doing their job, right? That's what they need. They need a system to understand their customer and keep that thing updated. They need a system to be able to present their offerings to their customer and keep that, fresh and exciting and sexy new videos and always be getting new brand content, right? And then how do they actually process the deposit or the application or whatever that is? So now we have, paperwork and contracts and deposits or, insurance, whatever paperwork we need.
Yeah.
That package goes over to production. Is like, I think what our industry does really well is overcomplicates the hell out of very simple things. And then everyone's kind of trying to keep up with the Joneses of all this technology. And I'd say, like, man, I mean, Joe, when we first started going to like these events in 2016, 2015, 2017, there was like no technology. Yeah. Well, now it's nothing but technology boosts. And candidly, like, if you don't know a lot of even about like how they connect to each other or how APIs work and things like that, like you can get really excited about one tool and then come back, try to implement it into your business. And it just is not going to work. And the information, and then it's like, and so I've just seen so many complicated workflows because somebody said, I'm using this and this is what it's solved for. But like, that might not have even really been a problem in this business, right? So it's like, the solutions piece is like more so like, what are the problems? What do we want that to be instead? Like, step back, think about the customer experience. What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? And then go shopping. Don't shop first and then try to make it fit. There's a lot of, I bought it, now let me try to make it fit. Should be.
It's a good point. I don't know, somebody told me, somebody way smarter than me one time was like, hey, if it doesn't make things go faster or reduce errors, like from that standpoint, like that's the primary one. Like you see with like contract software, does it allow things to flow through to production really well?
Yeah.
And versus, rep with illegible paperwork, things like that, or just not accurate. Like it basically takes you down the funnel of a contract that you really can't screw it up.
Yes.
And then again, time. If it's costing you more time and there's still errors potentially, then, and I always talk about, people probably hate me for it, but but they hear me say, one of the best programs I've ever used in this business, and it may not necessarily API, by the way, that's a 3-letter word that I have nightmares about. It's like the world latched onto that. And I'm like, what's the API on that? I'm like, geez, oh God, stop. But EntryLink, Provia, I still go whole. I mean, and people don't, and then I find myself, by the way, telling those stories of like, I used to walk 10 miles uphill both ways in the snow because of my experience now. But we did it on the addendum carbon copy.
I'll never forget. I literally just told this story to somebody recently.
You had column, right? You had all the columns for the hardware, then the finish, then the color, and then
this long.
Yeah, and then you'd submit it, and they'd be like, "We discontinued Huckleberry a month ago.
Yes.
Your addendum's wrong." What?
Yeah.
Hold on. So, and then when EntryLink, and it's only continuing to get better and better and better. But to their point, my understanding is they did it all in-house and built exactly like what you guys are doing with Salesforce. Like they saw some bigger picture stuff and said, hey, you can get on board, to our program instead of us trying to latch on to necessarily your program in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But it's one of the ones that actually worked,
all the way
and I'm
through.
sure in the beginning, I can't remember because I didn't, but now literally you can go from showed me soup to, and you're like, and it's accurate.
Yeah.
Pricing and products
is incredible.
Yeah.
But I was literally talking about this 2 weeks ago with somebody. I was like, one of the best pieces of technology I've ever used in this industry is hands down EntryLink, and the user interface, right? And I think Joe, I've been in organizations where we're talking about, using AI and sales intelligence recording platform, but we don't even have estimating, and we're still doing estimates on Excel spreadsheets. It's like, let's tackle that first, right? Because that's really what's going to make an impact in your business, and go on the ride along, right? And don't spend, $3,600 a month on a recording tool when we don't even have a real good sales process implemented, right? So it's kind of like, there's a lot of cart before the horse, and then there's so much sunk cost into that technology, then they're afraid to pull away from it because they're like, well, we've been trying to get it off the ground. And then they just keep paying for it versus just pull the plug, and make that decision. Sometimes I see a lot of that too, where it's like, it's broken, but we're still paying the subscription. We'll try to get it to work. But it's like, but is it really going to integrate into your business? And is it even what's going to help you scale? Right.
Yeah. No, it's some of them require that you have almost an onboard, PhD in IT, and I don't think people realize it. And naturally people are like, oh no, it's easy. You'll be up and running in no time. And then you're like, no, I'm not.
No,
not at all.
No.
Yeah.
One of our leaders said something it really stuck with me this week. We were talking about a technology tool, and he's like, yeah, we just need to weigh the distraction versus traction here. And I was like, that was so well said, right? Distraction versus traction.
That's Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
I've held off. I held off for as long as I possibly could, not because of anything bad, but with the AI recording in the home, because I was like, hold on, all this is going to tell us is that we don't have a set process first.
Right.
Like you have to put in the process so it evaluates against the process, and if our process, we don't have one.
Yeah.
Or, it wasn't refined at the time, and then once we did it, now I'll sing to the heavens on the one, the one that company uses, and it's just the data is insane, and like somebody asked in the group the other day, they're like, how do you have 12 hours to listen to 20 demos? And I was like, oh, that's what I thought was like, you just get in the recording. Like, no, the AI is the one that's evaluating it and grading it. And it takes you right to the clip and you're like, what the world?
Yeah, no, it's definitely super powerful. And like the trends that come out of there about, how many objections you have to overcome, the time it takes to win, like that's all super valuable. But how many people use those tools and don't even go to those trends pages? Like, I mean, I've gotten logins for clients where I'm like, oh, let me go into this platform, and I go on the back end and I'm like, you've had this for a year. You didn't even review one call. Like, what are we paying for this for? Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. One of my good friends, another trainer in the space, in the group, David Burkhardt, he was an early adopter with one of them. And I said, hey man, how do you guys like it? And he's like, we love it. He goes, the issue is, the reps themselves don't believe that the sales leaders, doing it. So now we're trying to hold them accountable to make sure they're getting their recordings in, and then they don't get any feedback from it. Now I know I can't speak to that particular one they were using, but the one we use, I mentioned it pretty openly, Zero. I mean, the others, even if you have the worst manager in the world, you can benefit by having it because you can self-coach.
Yeah.
And you can plug in and ask Zero, like, hey, tell me where I screwed the pooch here, and it'll give you some things. The other thing that I like, I was talking to our team about the other day, is it truly is the only way to separate the person from the process. There's no emotion.
Yes.
So, right. And let's just be honest. Some reps we like more than others, just personally.
Yeah.
Right. So you may not choose to, or let's just say you're dealing with a rep who constantly makes excuses. And after a while you just go, okay, well then I'm just not, what's the point of me fighting this argument with you on it? Well, here now AI doesn't know that you give excuses and that you're annoying, or vice versa. The other way, it's like, here it is. But this is just based off process. I'm a machine guy. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what your color, your race, what you get into on the weekends. I don't give a shit. Here's your thing. You suck here, and here, or you're great here, here.
Yeah,
it's nuts. But I think it's also, and I'm carrying on here, but I think the level like 301, the shit we could, pardon my language, we could never teach, words per minute.
Yeah.
Which sounds nutty, but again, because it takes all the data and it says, hey, look, all the ones that resulted in sale were at this WPM.
Yep.
Is that right? Did I do that? I did that acronym. Look, I'm good.
Versus
here, all your pitch misses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the trend of all of that information is so valuable. And then it's like, how does that feed into the coaching sessions, right? And if you know how to use all that information, you'll be better than anyone in your area, right? It's just like, those are competitive advantages. And then you hear the reps being like, I don't want to be Uncle Sam and this, that, and the other. But it's like, well, if that's how it's perceived in the organization, that was rolled out wrong, right? Because it should be a tool for the reps more than the tool for the managers, right?
100%. I think anything at the implementation phase, and I will give kudos to Zero. They were phenomenal with it. They helped us because naturally there were reps going,
yeah,
the Uncle Sam. And then my favorite is I had a one-off rep who was like, you're not getting the way I do it in the home. I'm like, oh, okay, my bad. Right. Like, that's not the point. Like, we're missing the point here, guys and gals. And the other thing that I noticed with it is for the benefit for sales managers. So if I'm a sales manager and I'm not comfortable on what I should coach on, it will tell you.
Yeah.
And it's pretty scary how, like, well, that's a good point. I mean, like, when you ask, hey, what were the areas of opportunity here in the lead, and it rattles off a paragraph, and maybe one or two things in there we're like, yeah, but we don't really, that's not major. But or you have no idea what you're going to say or respond to, and now you do from that. So it's interesting. Hey, one thing before I go, because I know you'll shoot me straight on this. So I posted, I don't know if you saw it, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I posted a couple of nights ago because we did launch it with one of the businesses, and it's awesome. But in general, I'll pay you for a pitch miss.
Oh, I
because
did read a little bit of that.
Okay, so you read about it. Okay, so I'll pay you for a pitch miss because ultimately I'll tie it back to the recording, which will grade and evaluate you automatically against the model. Thoughts, feelings? You'll be like, hey Joe, I know you. You'll be like, hey, you're an idiot.
Where my head went when I saw it was, aren't you getting paid anyway?
Technically.
Right.
You mean because if I have a $3,000 and let's just say $3,000 NSLI and I make 10%, I made $300 every door I knock.
In theory, right?
It's true.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I love the idea of it. If you guys are rich enough to do that, cool, good for you. I would be curious, how does it play out on the back end, right? So maybe it's worth testing or piloting. I always like a little tiger team to see how something like that performs. No one's doing it, so it could attract an interesting talent if it's right. I just think, like, look, in this industry, you're going to pitch miss, right? And so I try to err on the side of, like, no lead should be more valuable than another, because in my mind, they're all closable depending on the rep and the customer and who showed up and their attitude that day, because otherwise they wouldn't have called. So, like, we just kind of have to accept that. In my philosophy. So, like, for me, if I run 10 and I only sold 2, I still kind of made money on the other ones if I'm spreading it. But in a rep's mind, like, that's not how they're thinking. But the reality of it is like, if this isn't designed to be 100% close. So, like, I got to kind of know the game I'm playing, right? Like, what, you're a baseball guy. Isn't that kind of what they do in baseball?
Yeah, you're going to lose more than you win. 300 hitter, you're going to the Hall of Fame. So, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying, is like trying to drive the behavior to that. But in my mind too, like, if you executed the sales process really well, should you be pitch missing that much?
No, I think it becomes irrelevant. I mean, anybody naturally, right, is going to be like, I want the commissions more than the pay. But
yeah, how much you paying on those?
Well, and somebody asked me that, so it's driven by the budget of the business, because again, you can get pretty expensive, and it's nothing that's gonna to shake a stick at, but it's just to drive the right. Hey man, no matter what, and I say this to the team, no matter what, like if I'm down by 8 points in football, I've got to score the touchdown first before I worry about the 2-point conversion. I've got to do the model up until at least them saying no or I want to think about it, pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
Or should, right? If you're going to, that's your only control in the science experiment, right?
Yeah.
Or what you're saying. So I need that first. And that's what I really trying to drive home with reps is, I know it's hard, like, because you're only paid on commission, but you got to detach from that outcome.
Got it. Okay. So for you right now, it sounds like it's being leveraged as a tool in this stage to, like, build and buy in the belief on these behaviors that this is important. Yeah, I think that's valuable. Like, we used to spit all that, right? So, like, we're trying to change behavior. If it's door knocking, like, hey man, you go door knock, doesn't matter if it sells or not, you create the lead, I'm going to pay you for that type of thing, right? So yeah, in my mind, I would almost like spiff it for a period of time, get the behavior, get the results, and then the results should probably pay for itself in the performance when you get that behavior going. Okay, yeah, I see what you're doing there. That makes more sense to me.
But you show up to that 7 p.m. lead that gives you a little, after having 2 sales today, right? You're already 2, and everybody's going, oh, I'm getting the 3rd. Okay, all right, you're a unicorn. But naturally, you're like, all right, I've already got 2. You get some resistance at the door, or you get the kind of somewhat of a one leg, Bobo's out in the garage and you're not getting them involved, right? So you try to, you bail on the lead, you burn it and whatever. And it's saying, hey, in that example, it's like, look, man, I just want to reinforce, like, I just want you to present. So, and the reason why this came up, I was explaining to someone else and I kind of touched on it in there. The cool part about the one AI recording zero is I can look at the scorecard against the model. And I saw this drastic difference between the sales, shocker, we were 82% on model when we sold, and we were 51% on model when we didn't. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, why? There's nothing different. Like I tell reps all the time, like, okay, it was a one leg. That doesn't stop you from still doing the entry, or that doesn't stop you from doing like those things regardless. Yeah. So just trying to drive that early behavior. And maybe that's the best way to look at it, is it's a, first 90 days, whatever. And then gets to kind of validate it. But yeah, that's the concept.
Yeah. I mean, look, it kind of plays into thoughts about just like how you pay a canvasser, right? Are you paying them on the lead, the set, the demo, whatever these things are, And so I think if it drives the right behavior and it's cost effective, I don't know that there's any right or wrong answer,
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, I had a great talk with another group member, Brian Gottlieb. He was like, I think let's he gets so creative. Let's redo all the comp. What if we just pay them flat out salaries like you do in professional sports, and then they just compete because they want to compete? I'm like, I think you change the game. You got to find the right people, right?
Yeah.
There's somebody that loves selling as a living, which we hope people do, but I know they don't.
Yeah, I've struggled to find a rep on a nice size salary that produces the way we want them to. I would love that because we give good predictability in their income, right, and give them a different balance that they probably don't have today. But the best reps I've seen are full commission reps.
Yeah. There's been a lot of that discussion too because of certain states and like how do they come? I mean, you just got to let them know. It's like starting your own business. Can you run financially on your own for say 90 days? I mean, you'll get paid sooner than that. You should, but like just plan on that.
Yeah.
And take the leap. I mean, there is somewhat of a risk reward. So anywho.
For sure. And the personality that comes with that comfort in the risk versus reward and the betting on themselves is typically a hungrier, driven, motivated person from what I've seen.
Yeah, true. Well, hey, I took you way longer than I told you I would, so sorry about that.
All good.
I can't thank you enough. And obviously, I know you're always helpful to everybody, but cool if different people reach out to you through the group if they have questions, concerns.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah. Thanks, girl. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. It's really cool to see how the group's growing. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Joe. Bye.
All right. Bye.